Hello and welcome to From the Be-All End, and we're looking ahead to this weekend's Premier League trip to Fulham. And with the festive season coming up as well, we've decided to have a little bit of fun. We're going to be going through around the panel talking about our all-time Burnley favourite 11. Not the best 11, our favourite 11. We'll get into that in a bit. No Justin with us today, but I've got Andrew Greaves, Chris Bowden and Paul Woodhouse with me. I'm Simon Evans. And let's look ahead to that Fulham game. So a chance to bounce back from the disappointment of that game against Everton. We say that, but it's a tough one, isn't it? Greavesy, Fulham's form is pretty incredible of late, isn't it?
It's a weird one. Fulham away is one of those games where you, at the start of the season, you look and you kind of think they're the games where you beat them at home, get something away, and you're probably going to be all right. But they are a bit of a strange side because they run a decent start to season. Then they went on a run where they were, couldn't buy a win. And then they went on a bit of a run where VAR seemed to be gifting them wins late on every game. And then it's one of them. I don't know what's going to happen. From a team selection point of view, I presume he'll stick with what he's got and bring Charlie Taylor back in at left back. But the festive period's just weird. Liverpool on Boxing Day feels like, to me, the next game. This Fulham game on Saturday is just kind of completely passing me by. It's that because it's the day before Christmas Eve, it just feels weirdly just wedged into the schedule. But from a playing point of view, God, if we play like we played against Everton, they'll take us apart. If we play like we did against Brighton, we could nick a point or more. I really don't know what to make of it, to be honest.
I'm looking at the BBC's preview here, and it says Fulham have won 5-0 in their past two Premier League home games against Nottingham Forest and West Ham. There have been 3 occasions in the competition's history of a team winning by 5+ goals in 3 in a row at home. So, yeah. It is a tough. I mean, to be fair to Fulham, and Company was saying in his press conference, everyone talks about Brentford and Brighton as being examples of teams who've done well to build up and establish themselves in the Premier League. Fulham don't feel like they're in that category, but they sort of have done in a way, haven't they, Chris? A bit.
Yeah, well, I say to be fair to Marco Silva, he's one that I've sort of had a bit of a pop at down the years.
Me too,
sort of being like the Emperor's new clothes. I kept wondering why he kept getting these high-profile jobs, despite his record not being fabulous. But he got them promoted in real style, and kept them up with no scares at all last year, and that looks again. I say I'm one of those who kept thinking they might get dragged into it, and recent form suggests not. But I'm just looking at the sort of it's going to be one. Burnley. Hopefully, the way Vincent likes to play, he's going to go and want to dominate the ball. But I was looking at the 6 Premier League wins Fulham have had this season have come in the 6 games where they've had most share of the ball. So that might be important. But then looking at that, to get the ball more often than not, you got to win it first. And 5 of them Fulham wins have come when they've won more than 50% of the duels in the game. So they've been dominant in the tackle as well. So that might be the area on the back of Saturday when I don't think Burnley won a tackle, but where they might be found wanting.
What are your feelings going into this one?
It looks like they're quite rampant at home, doesn't it? They've had, like you say, 2 5-0s and scored 3 in the last 2, besides even 3 against Liverpool. So it looks like they know how to beat bottom half sides, which obviously we fall into. I think it might be quite entertaining, quietly away. The Christmas thing is always a nice little factor, and we're either good. It's one of those again. We're either going to get a sound drubbing, or I think it'll be a free scoring goal fest of some description.
Sounds intriguing. I mean, if it comes to goals, Greavesy, we've got Lyle Foster back in the picture. Somewhat lost in the misery of that Everton performance was the good news that Foster was back earlier than really we expected. And not that we've been given any timeline on it, but it sounded like, especially when Vincent was saying he's not going to African Cup of Nations, he's got lots of rehab to do and all that kind of stuff. And then suddenly, a few days later, he pops up on the bench and comes on in the second half. Do you think he's going to be tempted to start with him?
Yeah, I think he will be. I think he was a bit of a focal point in that second half in terms of when we did try and get the ball up. He's a bit more muscle. He's a bit more mobile, perhaps, than Jay. Whether he's ready for 90 minutes, and I think Vincent said that was what 45 minutes was what we could get out of him at that point. I mean, he's a fit lad. He got himself in good shape in the summer, and we know how quick he is. I do wonder whether if we could just get him to bully centre back, a bit more, whether that might be that kind of unlocking of some of the other players just behind him. I think Amdouni, that kind of player where the really frustrating thing, as we said in the debrief on Monday against Everton, was we didn't really bully Michael Keane and Tarkowski either on the deck with speed or bully them in the air, because we didn't really have the players to do that. I think Fulham's defence is probably more, we could probably get at Fulham's defence a little bit more, but it will need somebody like Foster to kind of get that muscle in there and to really stand firm against them. I personally would throw him in if he's mentally ready to go in, because I think probably, as Vincent was saying, kind of having that small world around him and him being around people who he trusts and he takes comfort from. I think actually the hardest step was probably that second 45 minutes against Everton, actually coming back on the football field. Now, he can't fail to have noticed the incredible reaction he got from the crowd at Turf Moor. I just wonder whether that will give him that extra little bit of a boost and he'll be chomping at the bit to start that game. And, if we get an hour out of him, so an extra 15 minutes, fantastic. I'd be starting him though, me.
Yeah, I think I've always thought if players are fit enough to do, 50 minutes to an hour, you should start them if they're key players like that, because, they can always go a bit longer or they can always come off earlier. And with 5 subs these days, if he comes off at half time, it's not the end of the world, is it? But that first half, just establishing a bit of authority over their defence might prove quite crucial. Any other team selection things do we expect, Boards? Do you think there's likely to be
I've just seen through. I was just looking at the Fulham side of things. Obviously, I mean, their main man, Jimenez, is suspended, which is a major boost. I think he scored sort of 4 in 5 before a bit of a kung fu kick on Sean Longstaff at Newcastle. So, crazily, I mean, he'd done a decent job filling in for Mitrovic, who they obviously sold in the summer. But from Burnley's perspective, it's again we've been quite happy with the shape up until Everton, and fairly happy with the personnel. But if Goodmanson's not available, and I say I don't know what more he can do at the moment. If he got he's going to play Odebear on the left. Like I said, does he go with Foster, or does he just go with with the tried and tested with Jay? It's I say it's toss of a coin, isn't it? But he'd seen enough on Saturday to take Jay off at half time and give Foster his head. So surely he's up for starting at Fulham. It's the only question is, do you tamper with the midfield? Do you thicken that up there? Bring a Cullen in. Well, I didn't think he was as bad as people made out. He'd fed a couple of decent balls in the area that centre forwards weren't dying to get on the end of. Really, it's going to be one of those. We really have to be aggressive on the front foot and and take the game to them. So I'd be quite happy with the same system, to be honest, as long as they play in that manner that we'd seen previously to Saturday.
I think that's a logical message, isn't it? If your company to say, right, okay, we slipped back against Everton, I think everybody would acknowledge that. Slipped back into some bad habits, didn't do some basics right. But look at those 3 or 4 games before that where we had been improving. If you're the manager of that team, you'll be saying to them, right, forget about that Everton game. Go back to playing how you played at Brighton, how you played in those other games. Would you tinker a little bit with things?
No, no, I agree with you 100% there, Simon. I think Everton are more of a freak side that we're going to be playing against this year, and the Fulhams of this world, things that we can have at least more of a competitive dash against. And I can see it being quite an entertaining, free-flowing little game. I really can, and I hope it is. And I think we can get something out of it. But I wouldn't take too much away from Everton.
Right.
Forward.
I agree. Well, let's see. We can't. We're not doing any predictions because that doesn't bring us any luck, apparently. So we're not doing that. What we will do, though, before we quickly go to our festive fun feature, is to just a quick update. Greavesy, the noise that was made about the Everton fans in the Burnley section and the trouble that was caused, and we also saw there were reports of Everton fans wandering around the changing rooms as well, which seemed a bit of a security lapse. Any update from the club? There was some sort of statement, wasn't there? A sort of non-statement statement, it seemed. But what's happened on that front? Anything to update us with?
Yeah, they're going to introduce rigorous steps following their internal inquiry. The people responsible have accepted responsibility. So Bobby Ball's got his braces back for this weekend. He's accepted his responsibility according to this non-statement statement. The rigorous steps, I'm guessing, judging from the wording, is we're still going to let Liverpool fans come on Boxing Day, but we're just going to be a bit smarter with where we put them and how we put them. I think there might be a steward sat on the end of the road just kind of saying, calm down, calm down. In a non-Scouse accent, I should say. We don't want to go all Harry Enfield, do we? But so I'm not expecting any change in the row behind me. I'm expecting to hear lots of blending law and all the other sentences ending with law that the Scousers can squeeze in. But yeah, very typical. It took them a hell of a long time to get a statement out acknowledging that there were issues. And I felt like a bit like the pre-Christmas Grinch by just keep bringing it up and keep retweeting and filling Bobby Ball and Alan Pace's timeline with people's complaints and whinges. But we got there eventually. We got a statement saying they're going to take steps. What those steps are, I don't know.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll rock on then.
It reminded me, remember the Liverpool away kit that they advertised in the mid-90s? The yellow away kit. And they had a load of guys in the black curly wigs with moustaches in the stand with this yellow away kit.
Lovely.
Not a stereotype at all.
Yeah. Right, all-time Burnley 11, and it's an all-time Burnley favourite 11. So let's just make this clear, because what we want to do is go through this, and then if you want to react to it by sending in your all-time favourite Burnley 11 on social media, we'll talk about that a little bit on Sunday, and we'll certainly share it on social media as well if people want to send them in. The idea behind this was just for a bit of fun at Christmas and just to cheer ourselves up after defeat after defeat. Not the best Burnley 11 of our lifetimes, necessarily, but players that are our personal favourites in each position. And you can like footballers for all kinds of reasons, and we will have reasons for these decisions as we go around. Justin's not with us today, so we're going to do Justin's bit after when we do the debrief on Fulham, and we can also throw in any interesting choices or points that have been made by you, the listeners, on social media. But let's get underway. None of us have swapped notes on this, by the way. We've all done this independently. So if any of us end up with the same choice, if for some strange reason I doubt it'll happen, we end up with the same four of us coming with the same player for a position, it means he's a real Clarets favourite, because we haven't swapped notes at all. So let's get underway then with goalkeeper. We're going through it 4-4-2 in position, and then we'll end up with who's going to manage this team as well. So let's start off with Greavesy. Who's in goal, your all-time favourite Burnley goalkeeper?
This has been really tough. I've gone for Marlon Beresford because for me, Marlon was the one that kind of, I don't know, he had the best kits. He was like an impossibly good-looking bloke, and I think he's still quite impossibly good-looking. And he was, for me, he was just a brilliant goalkeeper. So I've gone with 93-94 season, Marlon Beresford.
He was a really popular keeper at the time, wasn't he? I'm sure a big...
had a fanzine named after him, of course, Marlon's Glove.
That's
the
right.
Fanzine.
Yeah.
We don't have any of them anymore, do we? Unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm sure. Well, podcasts are the new fanzines, aren't they? Yeah,
of course.
So,
Of course. But yeah, Marlon for me. Marlon for me.
You twat.
Woody, who's your goalkeeper then?
Same. It started already.
Oh,
Marlon. For pretty much the same reason, but I'm going championship season, Marlon. Just for the fact that, when we had 5 keepers that season, we'd had Chris Pearce, and just going from that side to almost seeming like a Hollywood footballer, he was head and shoulders above anybody else that we'd seen up until I'd seen up until that point. And yeah, it was something else. And I've also tried to do this by looking at who could Vincent currently play around with, and he might be all right in a modern framework. I think he could play with a ball at his feet.
yeah, interesting one. Yeah, I mean, he was hugely popular. I mean, Pearce was popular for his dancing, wasn't he? More than anything, But and then there was Andy Marriott, wasn't there, who was on loan, who became like a cult thing. I mean, I don't know how many. He probably only played 20 games for us or something, but it seemed like he was like massively popular. Sign Marriott. We're going to be
I got him to sign. He signed my box of Regal, 20 box of Regal at Derby for the second, for the replay of the abandoned replay. When Jimmy Mullen's Claret and Blue Army went on for about 3 weeks.
It was a Guinness record, Jimmy Mullen's Claret and Blue Army, that one, wasn't it? Yeah. So who's your keeper, Chris?
Tom Eaton. Just you can debate till you're blue in the face about who's the better, him and Polpy in the modern era, but just like having spoke to him and dealt with him all those years, just one of the nicest fellas you'll ever meet in football. Couldn't have enough time for you, but it was just quite a nice tale that his dad was a Burnley fan, wasn't he? And it just sort of, he was supposed to sign for Sean at Watford, and that obviously fell through when the Potsaws moved in there. But he kept faith and kept his eye on Tom and made sure he brought him in ultimately, and for a free transfer. One of the greatest goalkeepers in Burnley's history. First England international in 40 odd years, and an all round thoroughly nice fella. And he's just a top man. Love him.
Yeah, I went for Tom Eaton as well, so I don't really need to add much more to that, really, other than to know, that impact he had when he came back into the team after Joe Hart's brief interregnum in the goal. Massive impact he made.
And probably that performance of his at Old Trafford, the greatest performance by a Burnley goalkeeper in my lifetime. Probably, the extra kind of 10, 15 years you guys have got on me watching Burnley. Just incredible performance. The amount of saves, and a couple of them saves in particular, just spectacular. So, Heats was my honourable mention for that position.
Yeah. Marlon would have been number 2 for me. Marlon would have been my number 2. Again, same sort of nostalgic, that era, those the mitre goalkeeping.
There might be a few of them appearing in this selection.
Like Peter Schmeichel's, wasn't it? The Denmark Hummel jersey, but spectacular at times. Marlon, wasn't he? In that first season he was at the club.
Good choices, I think, both of them. Right, well, I didn't have much to say there, so I'll start off with right back. Right back, we've had some good ones. We've had some good ones over the years. A few internationals in there, but I am going to go with Brian Laws, mainly for sort of nostalgic personal reasons. That, like, when I used to go on Gawthorpe with my dad on a Saturday morning, when I started going to watch it, Brian Laws was the right back in that youth team, and Keith Newton was the right back in the first team at the time. I say, revealing that I am slightly the oldest member of this panel by a fortnight. I think I've got on Woody, and Brian Laws came through into that first team, and that was just the change. That was the change from that sort of Keith Newton, Jim Thompson, Billy Rodaway era to these young lads who I'd been watching every Saturday morning. Ray Pointer was their coach, the A-team coach on Gawthorpe. And but when I used to go along, it was very different times. I used to actually get to kick in with the team. I'd go in my tracksuit and put my boots on, and while they were warming up, I'd go out. There was no security or anything like that. It was totally different times. And Brian Laws was the lad who would always, like, you know, pass me the ball and all that kind of stuff. So personal reasons with him. I was a bit sad when it all went sour for him as a manager, but a great player who went on to have a brilliant career afterwards, obviously with Nottingham Forest primarily. Unlucky, I think, not that, you know, he had another former Burnley player in front of him for a long time for England. Otherwise, I think, you know, Brian Laws might have played, you know, Lee Dixon. But I think Brian Laws might have, you know, I'd had a few caps for England as well. So anyway, that's my choice. Brian Laws for right back. Woody, who's your right back?
Graham Alexander, even though he didn't play much there at Burnley and his legs were going by that point. But I think he would under Vincent been the perfect inverted fullback. His ability to be able to kind of move inside, etc. I think in a different era, he could have been a very different player, but also a consummate professional. Obviously played until he was 97, you know, probably in an ice bath today as we speak. Exceptional skipper, exceptional penalty taker with a toe bung. Yeah, a lot of time for him.
Grazer it is. Right. Greavesy, right back.
I've gone Gary Parkinson. Because, again, quite nostalgic reasons, really. I always like Gary Parkinson because, to me, I used to play right back at kind of primary school, and the odd time I made the first team at Gawthorpe in the senior school. But he was just the goal at Wembley, I think, was just the kind of the pinnacle of my kind of early years of watching Burnley. I'd seen the Championship in 92. You know, we then got to Wembley in 94. And I just think I think he was, you know, a brilliant player before he came to us at Bolton Wanderers and Middlesbrough, and obviously everything he's gone through since. But yeah, just for nostalgic reasons, Gary Parkinson, and me and a couple of mates for our IT project, which was based around databases, created the Gary Parkinson fan club at Gawthorpe High School. We had a mate who was half all right at drawing, who drew some pretty good Gary Parkinson images to use on the merchandise, and we put everybody in our year on the database, so they were all honorary members of the Gary Parkinson fan club, and he is my choice for right back.
Good choice. Chris Borden, who's your right back?
It's total coincidence that he's getting the best right back that I've seen in my 40 years. Trips, and you know, just I just loved him. You know, like Sean Dyche spoke long and often about how he was his favourite. And it just if you the sort of fortune to be in and around him, you know, that we got to, you know, the opportunity to interview him and just, you know, chat to him at times down at Gawthorpe and about the place. Absolute, just a really nice kid, and to see him develop from a really promising, you know, very good Championship fullback into one of Europe's best. You know, he'll go down as an England legend. You know, whatever people think, just purely, you know, he's in a very select band of scoring in a World Cup semi-final for England, and I know he's going through a few struggles on the pitch at the moment. But it just that cheeky chappy, you know. He's a localish lad from Bury, Ramsbottom Way, and never forgot where he's from, his background. Never forgot the people that he met on the way up, and love him too. And he hates Rovers.
There you go. That crowns it. Good selections, good choices. Right, we can do 2 centre halves in one, I think, if we're working our way across the back 4. So let's start off with Greaves. Who's your central defensive pairing?
Steve Davis, Mark II, and Arthur Naheri.
Oh!
Arthur for the madness.
Oh, these are the ones we want.
And that goal at Preston North End, and Davis, because for me, we have had some good centre halves, and Bear last season and Harwood Bear, but they're all basically just pro evolution regens of Steve Davis Mark II. That ability to bring the ball out from the back, tough in the tackle, good in the air. And again, I've interviewed him a few times, and he's opened a couple of doors to ex-players who have needed for projects. Just a really nice bloke. I've forgiven him the kind of fist pump when he followed Coyle and they got the win over us, because I just think he's a superb player. One of my favourite players growing up, again, from that very first era of that kind of 1990, 91 and onwards team, and then coming back after going to Luton, being a coach. Davis for me. I kind of wonder what might have happened if we'd have stuck with Davis when Coyle had left and offered him that job, and where we'd have been and things like that. But yeah, and Arthur just for the madness, just because you never knew what you were going to get with Arthur Naheri. And what a player, what an absolute mad as a box of frogs kind of guy, and then scoring that mazy little weird run at Deepdale as well against Preston. So, yeah, Davis and Naheri for me.
Good choices. Woody?
Again, the same Davis, for pretty much the same reasons. The reason why we like Bayer, etc., and your Ekdals and this type of centre-half is because of Steve Davis. You can picture him in your mind's eye, just bringing the ball, and nobody tackling him for no apparent reason. Granted, it was the 4th division, it was bobbling, and it was probably at Rochdale, but that's neither here nor there. And my other guy is Joe Gallagher.
I knew you'd go for Joe Gallagher. I knew it.
Exactly. Just purely and simply, like, I wasn't brought up a Burnley fan. I went on with Simon and his dad, probably around about 1984 or something. And one of my abiding memories, even though I didn't play much that particular season, but around about 85, 86-ish, and watching this fella who ran quicker sideways than he did in a straight line, and also had this uncanny knack of always setting himself up as if he was doing that Bobby Moore against Pele tackle. Even if he was in the centre circle, it didn't matter where he was on the pitch. He was always looking to make that last ditch effort tackle. But he was no muppet. If you look at his initial career at Birmingham, he played alongside Kenny Burns.
Very highly rated player.
Exactly, and obviously something, car accident, etc., and then it fell to pieces. Went to Paddy on loan, etc., etc. But it's just this abiding memory of that time in the middle of the 80s of just utter shittiness, and he just epitomised that for me. And it's still a fond memory, though. Still a very fond memory.
Along with some folk.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it was that. I just knew when we were doing this project, I thought, I bet Woody goes for Joe Gallagher.
Yeah.
So yeah, glad you did. I went for Steve Davis as well, and my other centre half is Ben Mee. I don't have a huge amount of players from the Daesh years, even though they've obviously achieved more than pretty much everybody else, every other generation of Burnley players. But for me, he symbolised that Daesh team in a lot of ways, Ben Mee. Just that absolute dedication, organisation, solidity. Another player who could fall into that category, as Chris says, of being a really good lad as well. And just, I just thought it was really sad the way he left the club as well. And I would have liked to have seen him stay. Something always told me he would have stayed in the Championship if there had been an half-decent offer. Who knows, But I think, for a player who came in as a left-back and didn't look that brilliant as a left-back, to be honest. He looked all right, didn't he? But he didn't look like he was going to be, the featuring on our all-time left-backs list. Turned into a top Premier League centre half who's still doing the business now. So, and a skipper, a good skipper as well. Chris Borden, who's your two centre halves apart from Steve Davis from Southampton, obviously?
Well, yeah. If anyone who knows me, my all-time favourite Claret is Steve Davis. And actually, I was a centre half when I was at school and playing for my club, Exton Villa, and I used to just marvel at him. He scored goals. He was strong as an ox. Great in the air, gliding forward, sprayed the ball around like Beckenbauer. I think Mick Wadsworth was, when he was Huddersfield manager, I think it must be 20 years ago, played in one of the cup games, and he said he must be, if not the best, one of the best players that's not played Premier League football. That was when he was having a stint in midfield, if you remember, towards the end of Stan's time. And he could have played there. He could have glided through games there. And like Greasy says, just an all-round, just a delightful fella. Four promotions as player and coach. Just legendary material, isn't it?
Rolls Royce of a footballer, wasn't he? Really?
Oh, yeah. There's no pace in this centre-back pairing, by the way. Stevie Colwell. I still can't get over the fact that Stevie Colwell's 5 years younger than me. He's like one of them guys that when you meet and he just feels older than you. He talks with like gravitas and has that experience and just commanded respect, and no coincidence that he was the captain of that group of players, that wonderful group of players that gave us a most unexpected, and still for me, even though the circumstances of what happened with Owen Coyle a few months later, the most memorable promotion to the Premier League, simply because it just wasn't possible, was it? The team, that we've gone from losing 3-0 at Maidstone and 6-0 at home to Hereford to we're going to Old Trafford and Stamford Bridge and Anfield next season, and it's just madness. I don't cry often at football, but I had a bit of a tear that night. That was just something else, and he was the leader of that group in particular. And again, you're one of the nicest fellas you could ever dream of meeting in football.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I met him a couple of years ago. He's out in Canada now. He works around MLS and he works for TSN television.
He works for Canada national side as well, doesn't he?
I think he has been in there. Yeah. He had a lot of nice things to say about his time at the club, as a lot of players do. No, top man, good selection that, and a leader of men, wasn't he as well? They're valuable of those. So it's Steve Davis is the first one to get all 4 votes. I think all we need to do to get Steve Davis as a guest on this show now is send him a copy of this this episode, and he'll be on in no time.
And we'll get the wrong one. Yeah.
We should do that. Right midfield.
We need a left back first, shall we?
Oh, we haven't done left back, have we? No, we haven't done left back. Right, you're right. Right, okay, I'll kick off on left back then. Funny one, really, because there were a few nostalgic choices there, but they weren't very good. So I couldn't really honestly say that as much as I loved shouting whoosh during one period of time, I couldn't really put Ray Deakin in my all-time Burnley team. But so I went for another of Dyche's boys, who I think is probably one of the most underrated of that team, or of the teams that Dyche built. Stephen Ward, I went for as left back. That's who I've gone for. I thought extremely reliable and hardworking, and one of those players who Dyche squeezed every last drop out of. You notice quite a few of them. If you go and look at their Wikipedias, after they finished playing in the Premier League for Burnley, they dropped off rather quickly, quite a few of them, didn't they? But he were a grafter, converted centre forward as well, but you wouldn't have known watching him play left back. Woody, who have you got at left back?
John Hawley.
Ooh, he's out of left field.
Exactly, because I thought everybody's going to be going 80s, modern, and we kind of miss out a lot of the 2000s era, don't we? And it was just before, obviously, everything came to. And he was probably a little bit unlucky being in that Chelsea side behind Belletin Bakayoko, or whatever his name was, and Graham Lasso. And it was an infinitely more talented left back than we may have given him credit for, and could play a bit. And I always remember feeling moderately excited because it didn't feel like we got him off the, on the downward spiral of his career necessarily, and still had something to offer, and a reasonably decent player, and could probably, given a slightly different side, different manager, probably could have fit in extremely nicely in a modern framework as well.
In a Martin role. Yeah.
Exactly. See where I'm going with this.
Yeah. Chris, left back.
I've gone with you, Stevie Ward.
Have you?
It's like, you think back of the sort of moments that, that you'll never, ever forget. And him lashing that volley in at Chelsea. It's just like one of them rub your eyes moments. You're like, what on earth is going on here? Special goal. And like you say, he just, it's a 7 out of 10 every week, if not more. Can you remember many Ricks Stephen Ward made? No?
Not many, no.
So Mr. Consistent, and Charlie Taylor's rivaled him in that sense. Ultimately taking over, and he's had that longevity as well. Charlie Taylor, very good footballer, but I think Ward was a better player. You look at him playing at the level he did with a decent Ireland side in the Euros, and like I say, bizarre how he came over from Ireland as a centre forward, and. Just got like Mick McCarthy sort of slowly dragged him back, left wing, left back, and fabulous player, great pro, another nice fella.
Greavesy?
I've also gone Ward. It was a real toss up between him and Charlie Taylor, but I went Ward. Same reasons as you guys. The Chelsea goal, especially, was the one that just about swung it.
All right, let's go to midfield now. Let's start getting a bit creative. Right midfield, go on, Greavesy. You haven't had much on left back there, so start us off with your right midfield or right winger.
I'm doing a bit kind of, positions are a concept that I don't really abide by. A bit like Vincent,
man, aren't you? Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've gone Robbie Blake because I wanted to squeeze Robbie Blake in.
Oh, that's fair enough.
I've kind of shifted Robbie out to the right for that goal against Man United. That I remember sat in the press box at the back of the North Stand, and the stand just shook when when he lashed that volley in against Man United. It had shook the previous year when we were, picking off the goals that Spurs were ahead in the semi-final. But that, to me, that Robbie Blake strike and Phil Bird's Burnley's first goal in the Premier League is something very, very special. Robbie Blake for me, what a character, one of them real characters, bad beat Bob underpants. I know he's kind of forward or, can play in a few positions. I've gone in for my right midfielder, right winger, Robbie Blake.
Woody?
Phil Kavanagh.
Phil Kavanagh.
No, and there's a very personal reason for this.
There are very personal reasons. Go on,
exactly,
tell people.
Exactly. Right. I live down on the same road as Simon's grandparents, but on the other end there was a guy with a young family, and I used to play footy with him on my back street playing cuppies. And this other guy used to turn up, and I would only be about 9 or 10 at the time, and it was three of us would play cuppies, rushes, or whatever. And I didn't have a clue who he was. He was slightly better than me. And then one day, out of the blue, he brought me a full New York Cosmos jersey, a full England jersey, and a Burnley calendar. And I'm like, because I wasn't a Burnley fan then, I went, all right, cheers. Like you do as a kid, because it's not your frame of reference. You don't really give a shit. And it wasn't until later that I found that he told me it was Phil Kavanagh, etc., played for Burnley, whatever. Still didn't give a shit. And it was only later that I looked into it, found out who he was, etc., etc. And that's the reason why, because I could beat him at cuppies on my back street.
Still follows Burnley closely, does Phil? Yes. Yeah. Chris?
The Artful Dodger, Glenn Little. Just as, I'd squeeze Robbie Blake into any Burnley team for the pure joy and entertainment he gave Burnley fans. But same with Glenn. I don't think anyone had seen anything like him as a right winger. His frame alone, how tall he was with it, and his gait. He was quite sort of awkward. Not particularly quick, but it tied fullbacks up in knots. Just an absolute genius, and I could sit and listen to him for hours on a after dinner circuit. Just brilliant.
Another one we should have on as a guest is Glenn Little. Yeah, great player. I went with Trevor Stephen. That youth team, that same youth team as Brian Lords, that came into the first team about the same time. They were the right side of that youth team and went in. And Trevor, I think, was. I don't think there's been a better technical footballer played for Burnley in my lifetime than Trevor Stephen, and he was just really elegant in the old third division. Where it could be a bit rough and tumble still in those days. You play in Chesterfield away on their old ground and places like that. And Trevor Stephen just glided around. We all knew we were going to leave one day. He went to Everton, did great. And he was one of those players where you sort of follow the career, don't you? Even though he's left Burnley, there's no bitterness. We're a third division club. You're glad to see one of your players go on. And obviously to do it with Everton and then Marseille, wasn't it? And Glasgow Rangers. Fabulous footballer. And another one we'd like to have on this show sometime if he'd check his Gmails sometime, Trevor. Yeah, right. Central midfield. Let's do it as a pair. And let's try not to go beyond the hour today. It's fascinating, is this, though? Right, central midfield pairing. I am going for a player we've never replaced.
John Deary.
John Deary. Just because, absolutely a good footballer. Should have been playing at an higher level. We had a few at that time who you thought could play at a higher level. Absolutely, he was one of them. 100%, consistent, seemed like the heart and soul of that team when he was there. A very good footballer, did lots of stuff. And the reason why it became a standing joke that we'd never replaced John Deary is for years we really didn't. He was pretty hard to replace. And alongside him, I toyed with this one because there were a few different options. We'll get into honourable mentions and so on. There's players, I was very close to going for Brian Flynn, but I just couldn't have, and I'm not sure I'd play him in this position, but I'd probably play him at sweeper. I just couldn't have a Burnley team of my lifetime without Martin Dobson in it. And I only saw him second time around when he came back from Everton. Obviously, people who saw him before, he was an even better player, but he came back with that experience. Played at sweeper behind Mick Phelan and Vince Overson, who, I could have been very boring with this 11 and picked nearly all of that team because Overson and Phelan together with Dobson behind them as sweeper, Brian Lords and Andy Wharton attacking as fullbacks was great stuff to watch. Really exciting. But Dobbo was just class, just absolute class. He was like, he felt like he was a member of he really was a royal. He just had this oozed quality all the way through. Greavesy, central midfield.
I've gone John Deary again because I just think superb, and I've gone AD Heath. I've been a bit kind of naughty and shifted AD
Dropped
back
into the hole.
Drop into that kind of number 10 because he was for me probably the first big player at Burnley. He'd been at Everton, he'd won everything. I remember my dad telling me that. When we got AD Heath, look, this lad, he's won stuff with Everton. And we had brilliant players, but he, to me, was the one where you kind of go, bloody hell, this guy's a bit of a star, really. And I loved watching him, loved watching John Deary. Been lucky enough to, play against John Deary in a five-a-side tournament and have a few drinks with him and meet him on several occasions and done some stuff with him as well. And again, thoroughly nice bloke. We keep saying this. Now in double glazing, which I think shows you the kind of money that was swilling around in that time. A bit like Roger when we had him on, has his own business. He's very successful. Middle name, Steele, of course. So I've gone for Guile with AD Heath and Steele with John Deary, literally in the name. That's what I've gone for. So, I kind of the midfield that we're probably missing at the minute. A little bit of extra bite and a little bit of experience and now. So that's what I've gone for.
He was at the turf. against Everton, wasn't he? Watching his two former clubs, ain't she? Out of work at the moment. Wonder if he was at Goodison in midweek as well. Right, who's next? Central midfield, Woody. Go on.
Well, there's one player that's played in every single position for Burnley. The only player who's actually appeared in 2 finals. Never worse than 6 out of 10. Never better than 6 out of 10. And that's obviously Andy Farrell.
Andy Farrell. Did play in goal, didn't he? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Randy Feller, as the old name ever would have you.
And it is astonishing to think that he played 257 times.
Yeah.
It is, it's quite a career, isn't it? Anyway, and alongside that, just to compliment, obviously, his moderate ability, Stephen Defoe, who arguably in a different era, different legs, as Sean Dyche said of him, the most talented footballer he's ever worked with, etc., etc. And we remember that free kick against United. Some of the stuff that he managed to pull off and some of the strings that he pulled were extraordinary in his short spell. And you would have loved to have seen that for slightly longer. But ridiculous amount of names we could have thrown in there. But that's that.
Boards, midfield pair.
Flair. I've gone with Defoe as well. Again, that from that sublime chip against Bristol City to, again, another one of those moments where, curling in that free kick at Old Trafford and just what on earth's going on here again.
Yeah.
Alongside Wade Elliott, who
somebody picked Wade Elliott. Yeah.
Did genuinely play there, obviously, more renowned as more of a right winger, but moved inside and just a fabulous part of that promotion team. Grezza at the base of that midfield. And imagine having Wade Elliott and Chris McCann running at you all day long. They talk about breaking lines in this day and age, and those two, unbelievable. But Wadey, magic moments, particularly the goal at Wembley, the lovely story. His dad hadn't been so good, and waving at his dad when he'd scored there, and used to bump into him quite often in wherever in that area, Manchester, Salford. He was always out and about. Loved his bands, loved his music. He loved many a chat with Wade about. He loved Block Party. I think the drummer was a Bournemouth fan, so he must have known him. Bit of Strokes, just new music. I used to tip him off about new stuff, and he'd give me a few tips. And allied to his superb ability, it's Wadey in there.
Excellent. Right, left midfield or left winger. Let's start off. Greavesy looks excited about this one, so go on, Greavesy. He can't wait. I just saw him just that little bit.
Honestly, this is probably one of my favourite Burnley players ever. David Ayres, just magical, absolutely magical. Now James Trafford's agent, of course, so I don't know if that tarnishes his reputation somewhat, depending on how Trafford finishes the season. But working as an agent, working with a lot of young players, but yeah, just magic, absolutely. Him in full flight, just dancing around players. I couldn't go anywhere else. And I think he took the all-time best left midfield slot for a PNE all-time team. Big career at Blackpool, big career at Burnley, big career at Preston North End. Just a very typical Northwest footballer. But for me, a super winger. David Ayres. Have some of that.
Probably earned more money from that Trafford deal than he did from his entire career at Burnley, I would imagine. He missed a 10% on that. Who hasn't given us a left midfield winger yet? Woody, have you?
No.
Go on.
Agrees with first, that's why. Well, this is arguably that should be the easiest position because the amount of talent Burnley have had there throughout the years has been staggering. So I bucked that trend by going with David Ayres, prior occupier of that position, Stephen Harper. If you ever wanted this,
no.
I'm going with Stephen Harper. I'm going with Stephen Harper.
The hairdresser, as my dad used to call it.
That's the exact reason as to why. If you wanted a cross between Bobby Ball and Disco Stu, who had one trick, if you go on to the interwebs now and look for Stephen Harper 1996 goal against Brighton. Was this guy when we had this period of, you know, all these ungainly wingers, you know, people who look like they weren't trained, the Waddles and the Letitiers who make shit look easy. He made it look particularly hard. Exactly. You know, he looked industrious without ever doing anything. He had no particular pace. All his limbs seemed to move in, like, you know, slightly different, you know, ways, means, or whatever. And your dad fucking hated him, Simon. You know, and I remember once during the championship season, we'd had a particular argument about him, whatever. And in the first 10 minutes or whatever, he'd just like gone on one of his, I won't say slinky runs or silky for that matter either, and just did that thing where he just flicked it accidentally through somebody's legs, nutmegged him, and passed it into the far right-hand post. And me and your dad had a belly bounce competition on strength of that on the long side, and I won. That's why I've gone for Steve Harper, because I belly bounce your dad three lots of steps down the long side, and that was that.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
I can almost taste the sarsaparilla tablet.
Exactly. Stuck on paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm going for one from a bit further back. Second and third spells I saw him at Burnley. Leighton James. Taffy, I think brilliant winger. I love watching wingers. You know, I loved Morley. I loved Terry Cochran. I loved him to bits. He was proper tricky, sort of George Best style winger, wasn't he? But Taffy, playing regularly international in a good Wales team at that time, did well elsewhere, came back to Burnley. Just exciting to watch, took people on, proper old school winger, went straight at the fullback and went past him, whipping across, ended his career. And he deserves eternal credit for coming back to Burnley when they were probably paying him absolute peanuts, and playing sweeper in the worst team we've ever had, and just helping us to try and somehow stay in the Football League and stay in existence. But, you know, one of those players who came to the area as well and sort of made it his home in a lot of ways. Obviously, you know, a Welshman, but played cricket locally, I think, for Burnley and Reed, if I recall correctly. I played cricket against him once, actually, for Burnley. He was playing for Burnley Seconds. I was playing for Nelson Seconds. And he had a reputation of being a bit of a firebrand, didn't he, like Taffy? And I bowled in one that just pitched sort of middling off, and unusually for me, got a bit of movement off the seam. And it cut back in and rattled him straight in the box. And he were crouched up in absolute agony. And I got the full verbals. Bear in mind, I'm like 15 years old at this time. I'm getting the full verbals from him, every profanity you could imagine. But to be fair to him, came in the cricket club bar afterwards and apologised for his language. And I'm not sure many people have had the privilege of an apology for the language from Leighton James. But brilliant player. He's my left winger anyway. Chris Borden, who's yours?
I said he even played for Lower House as well, Taff, didn't he? So
yeah,
as well, crossed the divide there. But I was going to go Ersey for the same reasons that you've already heard, and still bump into him occasionally when he's watching some of his lads that are on his agency's books. But I'm going to go with the Tin Man, Ted McMinn. Again, we took him on loan from Birmingham, 93, 94 towards the end of that season, helped Burnley get into the playoffs. Famous masterclass of shithousery at Wembley, as Stockport had the two lads sent off that gave Burnley the task of overturning a deficit against 9 men and winning promotion. Job done. Unbelievable character. You'd see him. I think it might have been the first game I actually covered for the Burnley Express. They were at home to Barnet, won 5-0. Tony Philliskirk got a hat trick, and
remember that one.
Probably wasn't the hugely popular with Burnley fans. I think the man of the match went to Ted, and Ted come in. He's walking through the corridors afterwards, just going, "The game's fucking bent." He's just upset that Philly hadn't got the man of the match award, and ended up scarpering rather sharpishly. 95-96 season. It was after. It was some sort of ongoing dispute with his with an ex-wife.
Fell down under, if I recall. Yeah.
But you'd see him after he came back, and he was commentating for another of his old clubs, Derby, that we all remembered him playing in those epic cup ties against Burnley, and he always took the time to chat then. And so misfortune with I think he had to have his foot amputated after some form of accident or other. But top man, and what an entertainer.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, now down to the business centre forwards. Two of them were playing 4-4-2, so two strikers. Although Greaves has already sneaked Robbie Blake and Adrian Heath behind the front line in his attacking formation. So I'm curious to see who he's got up front. I hope there's a bit of height there, Greavesy.
I've gone Mike Conroy because he was. My mum used to be the deputy manageress of the York House nightclub, and the first ever autograph I got was on the back of a York House yellow cardboard ticket. And Warren Storr, the boxer, used to be the bouncer. So he wrote to Andrew, best wishes, and Mike Conroy signed it Mike Conroy. So it's the first autograph I ever had. I wish I still had it. And I've gone with Ian Wright because I just could not believe that Ian Wright had signed for Burnley. And I was dead lucky. I was in my last year at Gawthorpe, I think. Yeah, last year at Gawthorpe. And we had a snow day. It was brilliant. You may remember, Chris will definitely remember being at the press conference. But I was at that press conference because Eduardo Abbas, who was the club journalist at the time, worked in the media department, said, look, we're signing Ian Wright. Do you fancy coming? He knew I wanted to be a journalist. So I borrowed a suit. I think I borrowed Ed's suit, actually. I mean, it was ill-fitting on him. It was even more ill-fitting on me. And I went down and I was at Wright's press conference, got to meet him. What an incredible character. This huge, huge name. And Stan had convinced him to sign for Burnley. So I've gone Conroy for nostalgic reasons, and what a bloody good player as well. What a bloody good striker. And when we did the One Night in York DVD, probably available from the Works, basement, 50p, we interviewed him in Australia. I reached out to him and we managed to find somebody at the Age newspaper, an English fella who did it. And we organised a camera crew to interview Mike Conroy, and he was just such a nice guy. So Conroy and Wright for me, little and large.
That's a good front too, is that? I like that. Yeah. He scored some cracking goals, did Conroy, didn't he? Like on the break. Chris?
I could have picked 50. It's just a real tough one. But I've gone for two out-and-out goal-scoring predators. I think would score at any level, at any time in the last 40 years. Andy Payton, local lad, does good, gets released by the club, goes round the houses, 20 and 40 for Celtic, promotion to Premier League with Middlesbrough. I think he was close to signing for City at one stage under Brian Horton. But just 82 goals, I think, and golden boot in the promotion season, and all round good chap, and good to see him doing well with his coaching, etc. at the moment. And on a similar level, Charlie Austin. I'd have loved to have seen him play for Burnley in the Premier League. Just again, he proved he could score at that level. Scored a bagful for QPR and Southampton. Still going, I think, with Swindon Town, and off the pitch, another of those real cheeky chaps. Just a real buzz and energy about Charlie. Just a cracking lad. And I was gutted when he left, but replaced by Volksy, Ingsy, and Barnsley weren't bad, were it?
No, not at all. Woody, who have you got up front?
First one's Stephen Fletcher, because he was a fabulous player as far as I was concerned. That coming up into the Premier League, and how the devil we managed to sign him, I've no idea. But all of a sudden, you've got this Premier League, Premier-ready player who had an impeccable touch. He could lay off a ball, had enough pace to run off the shoulder of a man. Was tricky, saw things that other folks didn't, and you would have loved to have seen a good few seasons out of that fella in a slightly different era, I think. And besides that, and I haven't gone for Roger. I've gone for Ashley Barnes, for primarily because he's Ashley Barnes. For one, if anything personifies the last kind of decade or so, it's him. The prime art of shithousery, but the way that he also had extreme technical ability, and the way that he responded in that championship season last year from oddly being not knowing how to play football at the beginning of it to a Vincent style-ish number 10 or did a job there. Obviously owned the dressing room, etc. And I don't think there's anybody here who would not have that type of a character in the dressing room and around the place. And a lot of credit has to go to him for where we are currently.
The beauty of this is you wouldn't remove any of our selections, I don't think, from any of this. They've all been great footballers, haven't they? It's been cracking.
Steve Harper.
Hey.
Yeah, maybe I would remove Steve Harper. Yeah, but so I'm the last. Have you done yours, Greavesy, on this?
Conroy and Wright, yeah.
No, of course you have. Yeah.
The best
right,
two, obviously.
So I'll finish off up front then. Billy Hamilton. Got to be Billy Hamilton for centre forward in my lifetime anyway. I mean, just the sight of him with his socks rolled down, charging, even though it was a big man, charging down the right wing or the left wing. There was a guy who used to sit next to us in the cricket field stand who every time Billy Hamilton headed a corner away would stand up and declare, best defender in the club. Sergeant Major, we called him, this guy. He used to make these pronouncements. Get up, man. And he was, but Hamilton was, scored a lot of goals in that night at Tottenham where he ran him ragged. Graham Roberts scored the goals for him, but it was all Billy's work. Just the player, you think of that yellow away shirt with the little claret and blue bit across the chest, you think of Billy Hamilton. 1982 World Cup, I almost forget that England were in that World Cup because, like a lot of us at that time, 12 years old, there were two Burnley players, Billy and Tommy Cassidy, playing for Northern Ireland in that tournament. I were more interested in what they were doing than what England were up to, really, because Burnley were in the World Cup, and Billy obviously had a brilliant World Cup. You can still find, you think, if you go and Google around, copies of like Spanish football magazines where they have their team of the tournament, and up front it says W. Hamilton, D. Maradona as their front two in their team. So I just think Billy Hamilton, absolutely fantastic. Love to get him on this podcast and get him out of his trophy shop in Belfast to have a natter with us. But fantastic guy. And then alongside him, somebody who has been on this podcast and was briefly mentioned in passing there by Woody, but Roger Eli just brought that ground to life when he was playing. He really did. I know we've done a special with him, and if you haven't heard it, go and have a listen to it. Some great stories from Roger. But he just came out of nowhere. He was like a dodgy-looking fullback we'd signed, or centre-half we'd signed from Bury, who didn't look much cop, looked like a backup squad defender who'd come in on the cheap from Bury and turned out to be a player who just electrified Turf Moor. Injuries really ravaged his career. If he hadn't have had injuries, I think he'd have had 2 or 3 fantastic years at Burnley. But still a big part of that team that got out of the 4th division. I think we'll do honourable mentions on Sunday with Justin. And perhaps we can do the manager then as well, because we've gone a full hour there of what has been, I think, for me anyway, really enjoyable nostalgia. I hope people who are of our generations were nodding along, or maybe questioning, or maybe wondering why we've left certain people out. It is all personal choice, obviously, but do send us on @BO Podcast on Twitter or on Facebook any names you think that would be in your 11 who haven't been mentioned, or send us your whole 11 in if you want. And Justin's going to do his after the Fulham debrief, which is going to be very Christmassy, very close to Christmas, isn't it, all this? But yeah, Fulham game coming up. We'll have a debrief on that. And thanks very much indeed for joining us. I hope the younger fans as well, who perhaps don't know some of all these names, might have learned a little bit about our wonderful, rich history. And it really is. It just shows what a great club we all support. Going through tough times at the minute, but there'll be memories made this season and in years to come as well. All the best. Have a good weekend, and up the Clarets.
Jimmy McElroy to Watson. Go!